You're standing on the tee. Your backswing feels smooth. You get to the top. Everything looks right. Then somehow the ball sails right again, or you catch it fat, or you feel that ugly, jerky lurch that ruins the whole thing. It's not your grip. It's not your expensive new driver. It's the very first move of your downswing, and almost nobody makes it right. Here's the truth I learned far too late. The downswing does not start with your hands. It starts from the ground up in a move so small most golfers never even see it happening. Ben Hogan described it in 1957, and the golf world slowly buried it under gadgets and gimmicks. So stay with me, because by the end, I'll show you a drill from a book published in 1942 that can fix this in your own living room using nothing but your 2 feet and the floor you're standing on. Let me take you back about 11 years, because I need you to know I earned every word of this the hard way. I was the golfer who believed the fix was always something I could buy. I want to say that plainly, right up front, because if you've ever stood in a pro shop holding a driver that costs more than your first car, telling yourself this was finally the one, then you and I are the same person. I was a skeptic about the old stuff. I thought the answer had to be modern, engineered, complicated. I was wrong for a very long time, and it cost me more than I like to admit. My scores back then hovered in the low 90s on a good day. On a bad day, I stopped counting. And the strange part was I could hit the ball beautifully on the range with a 7-iron, then walk to the first tee and watch my drive slice into the trees like it had a mind of its own. Same swing, I thought. Same body. So why did it fall apart the second it mattered? I blamed everything. My tempo, my stance, the wind, the greens fee. Anything but the real culprit, which was hiding in the first fraction of a second after my backswing reached the top. Here's what I didn't understand then. There is a precise moment right at the top of your swing where the whole shot is decided. Not at impact, not on the follow-through. Right there at the transition in the space of maybe 0.2 of a second. And what most of us do in that instant is the exact opposite of what every great ball striker has ever done. We rush the top with our shoulders and our hands. We throw the club at the ball like we're swatting a fly. The pros do something else entirely, and it is so quiet and so early that you can watch it 100 times on television and never notice it. I first noticed something was off on the 7th hole of a scrubby little municipal course near where I grew up on a gray Tuesday afternoon in the fall. There was an old man playing behind me, must have been past 75, thin as a rake, using irons that looked older than I was, and he was outdriving me. Not by a little. By 30, 40 yards, with a swing that looked like it was moving in slow motion, no lunge, no effort. He just seemed to fall into the ball. I remember standing there genuinely annoyed because it made no sense. I had the newer clubs, I had the gym membership, I had taken lessons, and this fellow with a swing like a rusty gate was flushing it past me every single time. I did what any stubborn person does. I ignored it for another 2 years. But that image never quite left me, and eventually it sent me down a path I never expected, which is the whole reason I'm talking to you now. Because when I finally started digging into why that old man's swing worked and mine didn't, I found something that made me genuinely angry. The move he was making, the one I was missing, was not a secret at all. It had been written down, explained, photographed, and taught clearly for over half a century. It had simply been shoved aside, and the more I learned about why it got shoved aside, the more I understood that my slice was never really an accident. It was, in a strange way, profitable for somebody. Let me explain what that first move actually is. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. When you swing a golf club, your body is supposed to fire in a specific order, like a whip uncoiling. The scientists who study this call it the kinematic sequence, and it was measured with real instruments starting back in the 1990s by researchers using three-dimensional motion capture. Here is the order that every powerful, consistent swing follows. First, the hips begin to turn and shift toward the target. Then the chest and torso follow. Then the arms. And last of all, the club releases through the ball, ground up. Big muscles first, small muscles last. The club, the very thing you're trying to control, is the last thing to move. Now here is what almost every amateur does, and what I did for 20 years. We reverse it. We start the downswing with the arms and the shoulders, the small, fast, twitchy muscles at the top of the chain. The hips get left behind. The club gets thrown outward, away from the body, and comes down across the ball from outside to in. That, right there, is the over-the-top move. That is the slice. That is the pull. That is the fat shot in the shank and the weak little fade that finds every bunker on the course. It all traces back to one thing. Starting the downswing with the wrong end of the body, I want to give you the number that stopped me cold when I read it. Motion studies of tour professionals show that the very best players begin shifting pressure into their lead foot before the club has even finished going back. Read that again, because it took me a while to believe it. While their hands are still traveling up to the top of the backswing, their lower body has already changed direction and started moving toward the target. The two halves of their body are momentarily going in opposite directions. That stretch, that separation, is where the power comes from. It's like drawing a bow, and the amateur, by contrast, gets everything to the top, pauses, and then heaves the whole works forward in one clumsy unit. No stretch, no sequence, no power, just a lunge. So why doesn't anybody tell you this in plain language? Why did I spend 2 decades and, honestly, several $1,000s before I stumbled onto it? This is where I have to introduce the part of the story that made me a believer in the old ways and a skeptic of almost everything being sold to me now. Think about what actually makes money in golf. It is not you making a small, free, invisible move with your feet. There is no profit in that. The profit is in the driver that promises 20 more yards. The profit is in the training aid strapped to your arm, the launch monitor session, the gadget that beeps, the subscription app, the endless carousel of new gear released every single spring. An entire industry is built on the idea that your bad shots come from equipment you haven't bought yet, and I fell for all of it. I bought the drivers, I bought the weighted club, I bought the swing plane trainer that I used twice and then hung in the garage where it still hangs today, gathering dust, a $40 monument to my own gullibility. None of it worked because none of it addressed the first move. You cannot buy your way into the correct sequence. It is free. It has always been free. And a thing that is free and simple is very hard to sell. So it gets quietly left out of the marketing, and over a couple of generations, people forget it was ever the foundation of the whole swing. But it wasn't always forgotten, and this is where the history gets good. In 1957, Ben Hogan, along with a writer named Herbert Warren Wynn, published a book called 5 Lessons, The Modern Fundamentals of Golf. If you have never held it, it is a thin thing, barely more than 100 pages, with those famous line drawings of Hogan in his cap. And in that book, Hogan is absolutely clear about how the downswing starts. He says it starts by turning the hips. Not the shoulders, not the arms. The hips lead, and the upper body follows. He describes the feeling of the hips beginning to unwind toward the target while the shoulders are still coiled. Hips first. He could not have said it more plainly if he'd shouted it. Hogan wasn't guessing. This was a man who had wrestled with a vicious hook for years early in his career, who nearly quit the game, who then rebuilt his swing from the ground up and became arguably the finest ball striker who ever lived. He suffered for that knowledge, and then he wrote it down so the rest of us wouldn't have to. The book has sold well over 1 million copies. The knowledge was never hidden in a vault. It was sitting on library shelves the whole time. We just stopped reading it, because somewhere along the way we decided the answer had to be new and expensive and plugged in. Go back even further, and it gets more remarkable. In 1942, an Englishman named Percy Boomer, a teaching professional who worked in France, wrote a book called On Learning Golf. Boomer taught the crowned heads of Europe And he described the golf swing using an idea he called the feel of two walls, the sensation of your hips turning inside a barrel, unable to sway side to side, only rotating and driving. He talked about feeling the swing in your feet and your hips, not your hands. In 1942, before force plates, before motion capture, before any of the technology we now use to prove these things, this man had figured out with nothing but his own two hands and thousands of lessons that the golf swing is controlled from the ground and the center, not from the arms. Two men, one in 1942, one in 1957, both telling you the exact same thing I paid dearly to learn the slow way. The downswing starts from the ground up. Therefore, the question that kept me up at night became not, what is the secret, but why on earth did I never hear it when it was written down in plain English before I was even born? The answer, I've come to believe, is that the truth is quiet and the sales pitch is loud. Nobody runs a television commercial telling you the fix is free and lives in your left foot. So let me be the one who tells you, because somebody told me eventually, and it changed my entire experience of this game. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right about now. You're thinking this all sounds fine for the pros and for Ben Hogan, but you're not flexible anymore. Your back is stiff. Your knees complain when you get out of the car. And there is no way your body's going to start doing some athletic lower body move at your age. I want to talk to you especially because you are the person I was, and I have very good news. This next part is for you. The first move does not require flexibility. It does not require strength. It does not require you to be young. In fact, it is easier for older golfers than for younger ones because it is a move of timing and feel, not force. And you can learn the feeling of it tonight, standing in your kitchen without a club, in about 10 minutes. Here is the simplest version, and it costs nothing. Stand up, feet about shoulder width apart, like you're addressing a ball. Now, without swinging anything, just gently press your weight down into your lead foot, the one closest to your target, the left foot for a right-handed golfer. Feel your weight roll from the middle of your stance into that lead heel. That small pressing down, that little shift into the front foot is the true first move of the downswing. That is the thing the old man on the 7th hole was doing that I could not see. He was setting his lead heel into the ground to start down while his hands were still finishing the backswing. Do it slowly, 10 times. Press into the lead foot. Feel the ground push back. That ground, believe it or not, is where your power actually comes from. There is real science on this. Force plate research, the kind done in university biomechanics labs and by places like the Titleist Performance Institute, shows that good golfers push into the ground with a force greater than their own body weight during the transition. The technical name for it is ground reaction force. You press down, the earth presses back, and that energy travels up through your legs, into your hips, into your torso, and finally out through the club. The ground is your partner, and you have been ignoring it your whole golfing life because nobody told you it was there. Once you've felt that pressing down move standing still, add one tiny thing. As you press into the lead foot, let your lead hip turn and clear, rotating back and around behind you like you're closing a car door with your backside. Press, then clear. That's it. That is the sequence in miniature. Weight into the lead foot, then the hip turns to open the way. If you do just that much in slow motion in your kitchen 20 times a night for a week, your body will start to remember an order of operations it may never have known. And I promise you, the first time you take that feeling to the course and let your lower body lead while your hands wait, you will hit a shot that feels effortless. It will feel like you barely tried. That is the feeling of the sequence working. That is the feeling I chased for 20 years while I was busy throwing money at it. The knowledge was there all along, and if you want to go even deeper into exactly how these old methods were recovered and put back together, there is something I put together for you. I've written a digital book available in 3 versions, depending on how deep you want to go. Fix First, Deep Fixes, and full system that lays out this entire journey, the drills, the history, the biomechanics, and the forgotten lessons, all in one place. If what you've heard today resonates with you, the details are in the description below. It is the book I wish someone had handed me when I was young and stubborn and buying drivers I didn't need. But let me come back to what that first move actually demands of you in a real round, because feeling it in your kitchen and trusting it over a ball are two very different things. But feeling it standing still is one thing, and trusting it over a real ball with real trouble in front of you is another, and this is where most people fall apart. So let me tell you about the mistake that undoes almost everyone, including me for the longest time. The mistake is impatience at the top. Your instinct when you get to the top of the backswing is to hit, to go, to attack the ball with your arms and hands because that's where you feel you have control. And that single instinct is the destroyer of golf swings. Because the moment your hands take over first, the sequence collapses, the club comes over the top, and you are right back to the slice you fought your whole life. The correct move feels almost backward. It feels like you are starting down with your lower body while your arms are still going up. For a split second, your body is stretched in two directions, and it feels strange, and every instinct screams that you're going to be late. You will not be late. You will be perfectly, powerfully on time because the arms and club, being the last link in the chain, whip through at the very end exactly when they should. I used to think patience was a personality trait. In the golf swing, patience is a physical skill, and it is the whole ball game. The great players are not stronger than you. They are more patient in that 0.2 of a second than you are. They let the lower body go first, and they trust the club to catch up. That's the difference. That's the entire difference between the old man's 40 extra yards and my ball in the trees. Now think about what this has cost. And not just for me, think about what it's costing you right now, every single round, as long as this stays hidden. Every slice into the water is a lost ball, a lost stroke, a little more frustration eating away at the game you love. Every lunge from the top is a shot you didn't strike cleanly, a green you missed, a putt for par that becomes a putt for bogey. Multiply that across a whole round, across a whole season. Across the years you have left to play this game, which none of us should take for granted. The cost of not knowing this one move is not measured in dollars, though I spent plenty of those. It's measured in the thousands of shots you'll hit worse than you had to, and the quiet enjoyment you'll miss out on, all because a simple truth got drowned out by people selling you the loud, expensive lie. I get genuinely worked up about this, and I'll tell you why. It's not just the money I wasted, though the memory of that garage full of gadgets stings. It's the years. It's knowing that if someone had simply handed me Hogan's little book when I was young and said, read the chapter on the downswing and believe it, I would have had 2 decades of better golf. That's what was taken from me. Not by any one villain twirling a mustache, but by a whole culture that decided simple, free, and old was less trustworthy than complicated, costly, and new. I don't want that for you. Not for a single season more. So let me give you the thing I promised at the very beginning. The drill. The one that lives in that 1942 book by Percy Boomer, and that I have modified with what those force plate studies taught us. This is the drill that finally made the first move automatic for me, after everything else failed. And the beauty of it is you already own everything you need. You need the floor, you need your feet, that's all. Boomer taught that the swing should be learned through the feet and the hips, and he had his students feel the ground beneath them as the source of everything. So here is how you bring his 100-year-old wisdom into your own home this weekend. Take your normal stance without a club. Now, I want you to make a small, real step. As you would in your backswing, let your weight gather into your trail foot, the back foot, the right foot for a right-hander. Feel it load there, and then to start the downswing, physically step your lead foot toward the target, replanting that front heel firmly into the ground, and let your hips chase after it. Step, then turn, It is the same motion a pitcher makes throwing a baseball or a person makes skipping a stone across a pond. The lead foot plants first and everything else follows. This step drill does something no expensive gadget ever could. It forces the correct sequence on your body whether you understand it or not. You physically cannot step toward the target with your lower body and start with your arms at the same time. Your body won't let you. The step makes the ground up move mandatory. Do it slowly, 10 or 15 times, feeling that lead heel plant and the hip clear behind it. Then pick up a club, choke down, and make small, slow swings, keeping that same feeling, letting your lead side lead, then step up to real shots. Within a bucket of balls, most people feel the club dropping into the correct path for the very first time in their lives. That over-the-top move, the one that haunted me for 20 years, simply cannot survive when your feet start the swing. This is why that old man on the 7th hole outdrove me with clubs older than I was. He wasn't stronger, he wasn't younger, heaven knows he wasn't better equipped. He had simply never forgotten what Boomer and Hogan wrote down, the thing that got passed to him by somebody who learned the game before the marketing took over. He started his downswing from the ground, planted his lead foot, cleared his hip, and let the club fall. Free, simple, timeless. And there I stood with all my modern advantages, hitting it sideways, too proud and too skeptical to believe the answer could be that old and that plain. The knowledge was there all along. Percy Boomer preserved it in 1942. Ben Hogan preserved it in 1957. A handful of old teachers and old players kept it alive on quiet municipal courses while the rest of the world chased the next shiny driver. And now it's been handed to you across this table the same way it should have been handed to me 30 years ago. What you do with it this weekend is up to you, but I can tell you exactly what it did for me. It took my scores from the low 90s into the low 80s within a single summer, and it gave me back the pure, quiet joy of watching a ball fly straight and true off the middle of the club, knowing I did that with my own body and it didn't cost me a dime. That's the feeling I want for you. Not a fix you rent from a company that needs you broken enough to keep buying, a skill you own outright that no one can sell you and no one can take away, built on the ground under your own 2 feet. If you've spent years believing your bad shots meant you needed to buy something, I hope tonight loosen that belief just a little, because you were never the problem and neither was your wallet. You are the kind of person who would rather understand something true than be sold something shiny, or you wouldn't have made it all the way to the end of this with me. That's rare now. Hold on to it. So here's what I want to know, and I'm asking you directly because this channel only works when you actually tell me. When you try that step drill in your kitchen this week, I want you to come back and tell me one thing. Did you feel that stretch, that split second where your lower body goes one way and your hands are still going the other? Type it in the comments, even just a few words. Tell me whether you felt it, because I read them, and I promise you other golfers reading your words will realize they're not alone in this. Don't just nod and click away. Leave the comment. This audience is quieter than it should be, and your one sentence helps someone else find their way to this. And if you're tired of being sold the loud, expensive lie and you'd rather recover the quiet, proven things that actually work, then come along with the rest of us who are digging these old methods back out of the ground where they were buried. That's what we do here. Next time, I'm going to show you the forgotten truth about the grip pressure Sam Snead used, the one so light he said you should hold the club like a small bird, and why nearly everyone squeezes the life out of the club and throws away distance they'll never get back. It's another free fix hiding in plain sight, and once you feel it, you'll wonder how you ever played without it. Bring your 2 hands, I'll bring the rest. This video showed you why the downswing goes wrong. If you want the fix, come inside the Old Ways Almanac, where I pick up right where we left off with the ground-up transition drill. In there, you can ask me your own swing question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You'll belong among Old Ways folks just like you. Point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel anytime with one click,